Gagi Gabe Kwe Indigo, Bijudo Dem, Knorn Duji. Hello, my name is Ingrid Green, and I am the Interim CEO at the Ontario Native Women's Association, or ONWA. ONWA is the largest and oldest Indigenous women's organization in Canada. We were established in 1971 to support Indigenous women regardless of their status and where they live. We do this through research, policy development, advocacy, service delivery, and community development and capacity building. We focus on advancing Indigenous women's rights, improving Indigenous women's safety, and restoring Indigenous women's leadership. We are here at the CSW69 representing almost 40 other Indigenous women's organizations and groups who are ONWA members. ONWA's experience really began in the months leading up to the session itself. We were honored to participate in CRIAW-hosted prep meetings with other organizations attending the session and members of the Canadian Beijing Plus 30 network. Compared to previous years, we're humbled to see what feels like a growing number of Indigenous women and their organizations participating in this year's session. Indigenous women's participation in events led by Indigenous women and their organizations are critically needed at all CSW sessions. Instead, we often see Indigenous women and their experiences, solutions, and rights overlooked, others speaking for us, and/or decisions made that impact our lives without our involvement. So we are pleased to see greater representation here and hope this continues to grow. ONWA is deeply appreciative of the funding provided, which supported my attendance here at CSW, and supported the ONWA team to participate in pre-meetings, provide advice and feedback, and develop prep materials in the lead up to the session. Indigenous women's work is often unrecognized and largely unfunded. It is critical that the funding continues to be provided to Indigenous women and our organizations to participate in international human rights spaces where decisions are being made about our lives. Indigenous women have an inherent right to be involved in this decision making. Funding provided to support ONWA's attendance also supported my participation in two other events. One that ONWA co-hosted with the Maori Women's Welfare League and the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Women's Association on the need for the dedicated space by and for Indigenous women within the United Nations. Another in which I was a panelist for and sponsored by Canada and co-led by the Femme de Michif Otipemisiwak on Indigenous women's leadership. Being part of the Canadian Beijing Plus 30 network delegation allowed ONWA to build and strengthen relationships with women's rights and gender justice organizations, identify opportunities for joint advocacy and resource sharing, raise awareness of Indigenous women's experiences and rights, including sharing information about the Beijing Declaration of Indigenous Women, garner support from other organizations to amplify ONWA's advocacy, including calls for the UN and member states to uphold Indigenous women's rights, lead the development of advocacy materials on the Beijing Declaration of Indigenous Women, and a paper on the history and ongoing importance of the Beijing Declaration of Indigenous Women. From CSW69, ONWA is taking away strengthened and renewed relationships with Indigenous women and women's and gender justice organizations that will support future collaboration and advocacy. Overall, our experience at CSW69 has been a valuable one. This was made possible by the Canadian Beijing Plus 30 network.